Live from WRUE in Tennessee, it's the Scribbling Woman.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rue. I am a scribbling woman, and so are you. And that's why we're having this conversation. Here on this podcast, we talk about the writerly life that is unique to you, no matter your age, your season, or where you are in your writing career, even if you don't think you have one yet. You are officially a scribbly, so let's chat. You know, we've been talking a lot in season one, and now we're in season two about dreaming. And we've dreamed up your audience, your themes. We've talked about how do you authentically dream your own self. Well, once we discover that way of dreaming, we are filled to the proverbial brim with all kinds of good stuff. You've got amazing premises that you want to explore, inimitable characters that you want to get to know. I mean, even whole scenes come into your head while you're sitting in that coffee shop or hanging out on that park bench. Then we know it's time to shape them into stories or articles or poems, scripts, whatever. So much great material in there, right? So we sit down to do that, and all of a sudden, it all disappears like dinner guests when it's time to do the dishes. It's like when you tell your family you're going to do a yard work day and everybody suddenly has something else to do. I mean, where did it all go? Where is it? How can we access it? Well, it's all still in there. We just have to find a way to capture it. We just have to develop our own butterfly net. And our own is the operative phrase here, because just as everything else in your writerly life, how you capture ideas is unique to you. Today, we're just going to kind of explore some things and see if you can nudge your method out into the open. Now, we're going to approach this a little bit differently than we typically do. Usually, I talk about things that I hope you'll ponder later on. But today, I'm going to present you with 5 scribbling nudges. And after each one, if you want to pause your whatever you're listening to this podcast on and kind of jot things down and then move on, I think that's really the best way to approach this. Or you can just jot down the questions and save them for later. So for now, why don't you grab yourself a pen, be it quill or Mont Blanc, as if, pad, a paper, a journal, the back of your hand, whatever. And let's ponder some scribbling nudges. And of course, if something doesn't resonate with you, just simply move on. Okay, scribbling nudge number 1. You know, it's kind of the truth that how you do something is how you do everything. So if you tend to be a slow eater, then you probably really take your time folding your laundry or immersing yourself in an Agatha Christie novel. On the other hand, if you devour your dinner, you probably whip that laundry into shape and read 5 or 6 Agatha Christie's in a month. How we do something is how we do everything. So, with that in mind, think about the times when you've had to remember something, like you've had to study for a test or learn lines for a play or remember the version of the story you all came up with about what actually happened at the party. What do? Do you write it down to kind of imprint it on your brain? Do you say it out loud about 100 times? Do you see it in your mind like a film? That's what comes naturally to you when you're trying to remember something, and it's not to be ignored. Now, we're going to come back to that in just a minute. And if you're pausing to write this down, now's a good time. Or say it out loud or see it in your head. You get the idea. Scribbling nudge number 2. All right, picture in that vivid imagination of yours what it looks or feels like when you've dreamed up some fabulous ideas, but they become elusive when you try to write them down. Can you create an image for that? Of course you can. You're a writer. It's what we do. Maybe it's like stuffing a toddler into a snowsuit. I wish I could take credit for that. That comes from author Janelle Schneider, who lives in Canada and knows whereof she speaks. Or maybe it's more like trying to grasp fog in your hands or herding cats. We're writers. Images are our stock in trade. Pause here. See what comes up in your imagination. What is it like when you're trying to recapture those ideas you dreamed up? Scribbling nudge number 3. All right, so given that image, forget about writing for the moment, just given that image of trying to stuff a toddler into a snowsuit or whatever it is you came up with, what would be the best way to coax that to come closer? So, for example, if capturing ideas for you is like stuffing a toddler into a snowsuit, could you imagine yourself giving him a cookie to keep him occupied while you get those chubby little arms into those puffy little sleeves? If it's more like grasping fog, can you picture yourself just walking through it until you're damp? If your ideas are like cats that you're trying to herd, would you dangle some catnip? Okay, so this seems a little bit absurd, but humor me and yourself. We're playing into what is authentic to us. So pause right now and play. Scribbling nudge number 3. Now, given that image, okay, this is scribbling nudge number 4, sorry. What might the idea capturing version of that be? Okay, so giving that toddler a cookie would equal sitting down with a coffee and a biscotti and jotting down ideas while your brain thinks it's just having a snack. In other words, reward yourself. Doesn't have to be with food, but why not, right? Fog walking could be like getting those ideas on you until you practically become one with the mist and the dampness and the mystery. As for catnip, I have no clue. Okay, so maybe it's like luring your inspired ideas to stay with you in some way. Make it worth their while to come closer before you grab them and put them in the kitty carrier. Pause right here. Brew a coffee. Get it on you. Tantalize it. Write it down. What is the best way to lure those ideas to hang out with you? And finally, scribbling nudge number 5. I think that capturing ideas can be as creative as the ideas themselves. Why not? What's the most fun way that you can imagine for corralling those amazing thoughts? Okay, just to kind of get you started, what about a handmade journal or one you discover in a bookstore or on Etsy after much exploration? It has to be just the right one. Or maybe a Pinterest board is more your speed, or a vision board hanging on your wall. Maybe it's a running recording of those ideas in a variety of voices so that it's fun to go back and listen to. Okay, or maybe having them tattooed on your arm. Okay, wait, maybe not that one, but you see what I'm saying. It may help here to go back to scribbling nudge number 1. How do you do most things? So if you love spontaneous and spur of the moment, what could be more playful than having all the ideas tacked onto a cork board or dangling from a mobile on your ceiling? If you do everything in a planned, organized way, it might be really cool to keep a curated file with colored folders and stickers and a master list done by hand in calligraphy. If you tend to plod and ponder, then you'd have more fun putting things down on small pieces of paper and tossing them into a basket for later. It has to work for you. On this week's blog post, which you can find at www.nancyrue.com/blog, I'm going to walk you through this process again so that you can come up with the most creative, delightful, enjoyable, and most of all, efficient way to capture your ideas. And then in upcoming episodes, we're going to explore more about your way of shaping those dreams that you've captured into projects. And if you don't want to miss any of those, you can also subscribe to the podcast at www.nancyrue.com/podcast. Until next time, Scribblies, scribble on.